When his eyes finally opened, disorientation swept through him like a cold wave. This wasn't his penthouse. This wasn't his hotel suite. And the warm body breathing softly beside him definitely wasn't someone he recognized. Dark hair spilled across the adjacent pillow, framing a face that even in his panic he registered as strikingly beautiful. The woman stirred, eyelids fluttering. For 3 excruciating seconds, their gazes locked in mutual shock before she bolted upright, clutching the sheets to her chest. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing in my room?" Her voice cut through the morning silence, sharp with indignation rather than fear. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our royal story family. Your throne in this kingdom of stories is waiting for you. These passionate journeys of hearts colliding against all odds have brought together thousands of beautiful souls just like you. Make sure you hit the bell too, so you'll know immediately when a new story drops. Hello once again, my beautiful royal story family. Before we dive into this passionate journey, I'm curious, where in this beautiful world are you watching from today? Whether you're in a bustling city or a quiet village, drop your location in the comments below. The morning sunlight streaming through the cream-colored curtains of room 718 at the Montclair Hotel cast everything in a golden haze that belied the tension crackling between its 2 occupants. Nathaniel Hargrove, dressed in a rumpled tuxedo that had cost more than most people's monthly rent, stood with his back pressed against the wall, as far from the bed as the room's dimensions allowed. "I sincerely apologize, Miss," he began, voice hoarse. "Hayes? Kelsey Hayes?" she supplied, still clutching the bedsheet, though she was fully clothed in a tank top and sleep shorts. Her dark hair framed a face with striking features, high cheekbones, full lips now pressed into a thin line, and eyes that reminded him of storm clouds, gray and turbulent. The name hit him like a bucket of ice water, instantly clearing some of the fog from his pounding head. Kelsey Hayes? The environmental attorney who had been making headlines with her crusade against industrial pollution. The same attorney whose firm had filed a massive class-action lawsuit against Hargrove Industries just last month, alleging water contamination at their Riverside facility. He was in the hotel room of his company's most formidable legal opponent. "Miss Hayes," he continued, slipping reflexively into the smooth, controlled tone he used for damage control in board meetings. "I truly don't remember entering your room. The last thing I recall was leaving the hotel bar around 1 a.m. I would never intentionally intrude on anyone's privacy." Kelsey's eyes narrowed, taking in his disheveled appearance with clear skepticism. "So you just happened to have a key that worked on my door? That seems convenient." Nathaniel ran a hand through his dark hair, wincing as the movement amplified his headache. The hotel must have made a keying error. These electronic systems sometimes malfunction. Even to his own ears, the explanation sounded insufficient. "And you were too drunk to notice you were entering the wrong room?" There was no mistaking the judgment in her tone, and something about it scraped against his pride. "I had several drinks. Yes, it was a celebration." His voice cooled several degrees. "I don't make a habit of excessive drinking or entering strangers' rooms." "Just women you don't know," she shot back. Then her eyes widened with sudden recognition. "Wait, Hargrove? You're Nathaniel Hargrove of Hargrove Industries?" The familiar tension tightened his shoulders. "I am." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Perfect. Of all the rooms in this hotel, the CEO of the company I'm suing for poisoning an entire community's water supply ends up passed out in my bed. What were you doing? Looking for evidence? Trying to intimidate me?" "I was celebrating an award, Miss Hayes, not orchestrating some elaborate corporate espionage," he replied, an edge creeping into his voice. "Though I'm flattered you think I'd make such efforts in your specific case." Her eyes flashed. "Your company's negligence has affected the health of over 2,000 people, Mr. Hargrove. I wouldn't be so flippant if I were you." Nathaniel reached for his wallet, a reflexive action that had solved most inconvenient problems throughout his adult life. "I understand this is a disturbing situation. Please allow me to compensate you for the distress, and I'll speak with hotel management about their security protocols." The ice in Kelsey's expression hardened to something closer to steel. "Put your wallet away, Mr. Hargrove. I don't need your money." She stood, the sheet falling away to reveal her simple sleep clothes. Something in Nathaniel's chest tightened at the sight of her. Not just her physical beauty, which was considerable, but the fierce dignity in her stance. "What I need," she continued, "is for men like you to realize not everything has a price tag. Not clean water, not people's health, and certainly not my silence about waking up to find the CEO of Hargrove Industries in my hotel room." The threat wasn't subtle. In an instant, Nathaniel imagined the headlines: "Environmental Crusader finds polluting CEO in her bed." The scandal, the board's reaction, the plummeting stock prices. All because he'd had too much to drink after receiving an award that suddenly seemed hollow. "What do you want, Miss Hayes?" he asked quietly, all pretense falling away. Something flickered in her gray eyes, surprise perhaps at his direct question. "I want you out of my room. I want your company to stop fighting our lawsuit and start cleaning up the contamination you've caused. I want corporate executives to face actual consequences for their actions." Nathaniel held her gaze, seeing beyond the anger to something else. Conviction. Yes, but also exhaustion. The wariness of someone fighting a battle they weren't sure they could win. "The contamination allegations are still unproven," he said, more gently than he'd intended. "But I understand your position." "Do you?" she challenged. "Have you ever visited Riverside? Have you seen the children with unexplained rashes, the cancer clusters, the wildlife dying in that river?" He hadn't, and they both knew it. Board reports and legal briefs had reduced the situation to statistics and liability assessments, carefully sanitized of human suffering. "If what you're alleging is true," he said carefully, "then something should be done. But proper investigations take time, and correlation doesn't always equal." "Save the corporate speak for your press releases," Kelsey interrupted, reaching for her phone. "Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do. Unless you'd like me to call security to escort you out?" Nathaniel straightened his rumpled jacket, regaining some of his usual composure. "That won't be necessary. I apologize again for the intrusion, Miss Hayes. Whatever you believe about my company, this was genuinely an accident." Their eyes met one final time, and in that brief connection, something unexpected passed between them, a current of recognition that transcended their professional enmity. For just a moment, they weren't CEO and attorney, defendant and plaintiff. They were simply a man and a woman, seeing each other with surprising clarity despite the bizarre circumstances. "Goodbye, Mr. Hargrove," she said finally. "I suggest you drink less at your next celebration." As the door closed behind him, Nathaniel stood in the hotel corridor. The weight of his hangover, nothing compared to the unsettling feeling that in those few minutes with Kelsey Hayes, she had seen through more of his carefully constructed facades than anyone had in years. What he couldn't know, was that as Kelsey leaned against the closed door, heart pounding inexplicably fast, she was fighting a disturbing realization of her own. The man she'd just met bore little resemblance to the callous corporate villain she'd constructed in her mind, and that discrepancy would prove far more dangerous to her carefully ordered world than any legal battle ever could. 3 days later, Kelsey stood in the marble-floored lobby of the Jefferson County Courthouse, reviewing her notes for the preliminary hearing on the Hargrove Industries case. The familiar pre-court adrenaline coursed through her veins, but today it was mingled with something else, a lingering disquiet that she attributed to her strange encounter with Nathaniel Hargrove. "You're distracted," observed Amara Wilson, her co-counsel and closest friend since law school. "That's not like you before a hearing." Kelsey shook her head, tightening her grip on her leather portfolio. "Just reviewing the testimonies from the Riverside residents. Judge Calloway has a reputation for dismissing emotional appeals." Amara's dark eyes studied her with the penetrating insight that made her such a formidable attorney. "This wouldn't have anything to do with your unexpected hotel visitor, would it?" Kelsey had told Amara about the incident, though she'd downplayed its effect on her. "Of course not. That was just bizarre coincidence." Amara hummed skeptically. "And the fact that said visitor will likely be sitting at the defense table today has nothing to do with why you spent an extra 30 minutes on your appearance this morning?" "I always dress professionally for court," Kelsey protested, though she was uncomfortably aware of the extra care she'd taken with her hair, which now fell in soft waves around her shoulders instead of in its usual severe bun. "You're wearing the power suit," Amara noted with a knowing smile. "The one you save for when you need to feel bulletproof." Before Kelsey could respond, the massive oak doors at the end of the hallway opened, and a procession of dark suits entered. Hargrove Industries' legal team, led by William Preston, one of the most expensive corporate attorneys in the country. And behind them, commanding attention without even trying, walked Nathaniel Hargrove. He looked nothing like the rumpled, disoriented man who had woken in her hotel room. Today, he was the epitome of corporate power in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair impeccably styled, his posture radiating the quiet confidence of a man accustomed to controlling rooms full of people with much more authority than a county judge. Their eyes met across the marble expanse, and for a moment, the bustle of the courthouse seemed to fade away. A slight flush crept up Kelsey's neck, partly from anger at his composure, partly from something else she refused to name. "Well," Amara murmured beside her, "this case just got a lot more interesting." In the courtroom, Kelsey presented her opening arguments with the passion and precision that had made her one of the most respected environmental attorneys in the state. She detailed the suspicious pattern of illnesses in Riverside, the chemical analysis of water samples taken downstream from Hargrove Industries' manufacturing plant, and the company's history of environmental violations, albeit minor ones, in other facilities. When Preston rose for the defense, he was predictably dismissive, citing lack of definitive causality and questioning the methodologies of the plaintiff's testing. It was standard corporate defense strategy, and Kelsey had expected nothing less. What she hadn't expected was for Nathaniel Hargrove himself to request permission to address the court. "Your Honor," he said, his deep voice resonating through the wood-paneled room, "while my attorneys have prepared a thorough defense of our company's practices, I would like to propose an alternative approach." Judge Calloway's eyebrows rose. "This is unusual, Mr. Hargrove, but proceed." "Hargrove Industries proposes an independent joint investigation of the Riverside situation," Nathaniel continued, ignoring the visible shock on his own legal team's faces. "We will provide complete access to our facility records and operations, fund comprehensive water and soil testing by a mutually agreed-upon third party, and should contamination linked to our plant be confirmed, commit to immediate remediation and appropriate compensation." A murmur swept through the courtroom. This wasn't a standard defense tactic. It was practically an admission that there might be merit to the plaintiff's claims. Kelsey stared at him, trying to reconcile this man with both the corporate villain she'd constructed in her head and the disheveled intruder from her hotel room. Neither image aligned with the executive now basically offering to cooperate rather than fight a protracted legal battle. "Miss Hayes," Judge Calloway said, "your response to Mr. Hargrove's proposal?" Kelsey stood, mind racing. This could be a trap, a way to control the narrative and the evidence. Or it could be a genuine opportunity to achieve what her clients actually needed, clean water and medical care, without years of expensive litigation. "We would need to discuss specific parameters, Your Honor," she said carefully. "But in principle, if Hargrove Industries is genuinely willing to investigate transparently and commit to remediation if needed, that would serve our clients' interests better than a lengthy court battle." The judge nodded. "I'm inclined to give you both the opportunity to explore this approach. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks to hear your joint proposal for the investigation parameters." Court adjourned. As the courtroom emptied, Kelsey gathered her materials, acutely aware of Nathaniel Hargrove approaching her table. His cologne reached her first, something expensive but subtle, with notes of cedar and bergamot. Then his shadow fell across her notes. "Miss Hayes," he said quietly, "might I have a word?" Amara shot her a meaningful look before discreetly stepping away, leaving Kelsey alone with the man whose company she'd been preparing to battle for months. "That was unexpected," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "Your legal team looked ready to mutiny." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "They're paid to follow my instructions, not the other way around." "And what prompted this sudden spirit of cooperation, Mr. Hargrove? Some crisis of conscience after our hotel encounter?" His expression became more serious. After our encounter, I had our environmental compliance team pull all the data from the Riverside facility. There are some concerning patterns that warrant further investigation. He paused. And yes, perhaps our conversation did prompt me to look more closely at something I'd been content to delegate to legal teams. Kelsey studied him, searching for the deception she expected from a corporate executive, but finding only a direct, unflinching gaze. Why should I trust? This isn't just a more sophisticated strategy to bury the evidence or drag out the process until my clients can't afford to continue. You shouldn't trust me, he replied with surprising candor. That's why I'm proposing an independent investigation with terms we both agree to. Trust the process we design, not me personally. Something in his frankness disarmed her usual defenses. I'll need guarantees about the independence of the investigators, access to historical data, and medical testing for the affected residents. All reasonable requests, he nodded. I suggest we meet tomorrow to begin hammering out the details. Neutral territory, not your office or mine. The River Cafe, Kelsey suggested, naming a small restaurant near the courthouse. 2:00. I'll be there, he agreed, then hesitated. Miss Hayes, Kelsey, for what it's worth, if our facility is responsible for harming people in Riverside, I want to make it right, not just legally but ethically. As he walked away, Kelsey found herself watching his retreating figure with a disturbing mixture of professional wariness and personal interest. Something about Nathaniel Hargrove didn't fit the narrative she'd constructed, and as any good attorney knew, it was the facts that didn't fit that often proved most important to a case. What she couldn't possibly have known then was that their meeting the next day would be the first of many, each one gradually eroding the carefully constructed boundaries between professional opponents and reluctant allies, and eventually between strangers and something far more complicated. If you're enjoying this unexpected connection already, take a second to give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments if you've ever had an unexpected meeting that changed the course of your life. Those moments of serendipity are often the universe's way of leading us exactly where we need to be. The River Cafe occupied a renovated boathouse overlooking the same waterway that connected downtown to the Riverside community at the heart of their case. Kelsey had chosen it deliberately, a reminder of what was at stake. She arrived early, selecting a corner table with a view of both the water and the entrance, a habit from years of legal negotiations where positioning mattered. She had dressed carefully in a professional but less formal outfit than her courtroom attire. Charcoal slacks and a soft blue blouse that brought out the gray in her eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, a compromise between severe professionalism and the softer look she'd caught herself considering. Nathaniel arrived precisely at 2, dressed in what must have been his version of casual, tailored dark jeans and a crisp white button-down with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. The absence of a tie and suit jacket shouldn't have made such a difference, but somehow the slight informality made him seem more approachable, more human. Miss Hayes, he greeted her, then corrected himself. Kelsey, if I may. If we're going to be working together on this investigation, first names seem practical, she conceded, gesturing to the chair across from her. He sat, placing a sleek leather portfolio on the table between them. I've taken the liberty of drafting some initial parameters for the investigation, not as a final proposal, but as a starting point for discussion. Kelsey accepted the document, impressed despite herself by its thoroughness. The proposal outlined a joint selection committee for choosing independent scientific investigators, complete facility access, comprehensive testing protocols, and a timeline that was ambitious but feasible. This is actually reasonable, she admitted, looking up to find him watching her with those intense eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. You sound surprised, he observed. In my experience, corporations fight environmental claims tooth and nail, dragging out litigation until plaintiffs run out of money or will. This is, she gestured to the proposal, different. Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the river outside. My father built Hargrove Industries from a single manufacturing plant. He used to say we made things that mattered, that improved people's lives. A shadow crossed his face. Somewhere along the way, as we expanded, that purpose got buried under quarterly reports and shareholder expectations. The unexpected vulnerability in his voice caught Kelsey off guard. This wasn't the corporate persona she'd prepared to negotiate with. "So this is what? Redemption?" she asked, more gently than she'd intended. His eyes returned to hers, something unreadable in their depths. "Let's call it course correction. If our facility is harming people, I want to know that and fix it, not just because of the lawsuit, but because it's the right thing to do." Their eyes held for a moment too long, the connection between them shifting into something neither had anticipated. Kelsey broke the contact first, returning her attention to the document. "You've included medical testing and treatment for affected residents," she noted. "That wasn't in our original demands." "It seemed necessary," he replied simply. "If there's contamination and it's affected people's health, addressing only the environmental aspect doesn't solve the whole problem." They spent the next 2 hours dissecting the proposal, adding safeguards Kelsey insisted upon, refining timelines, and discussing potential investigators. Throughout, Kelsey found herself repeatedly surprised by Nathaniel's grasp of the technical details and his willingness to concede points that mattered to her. As they worked, their initial formality gradually gave way to a more natural rhythm. She noticed things about him she hadn't before. The slight crease between his brows when he concentrated, the way he listened with complete attention when she spoke, the unexpected humor that occasionally surfaced in his comments. "You're not what I expected," she admitted as they finalized the last details. "And what did you expect?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, his posture more relaxed than when they'd begun. "A corporate automaton," she said honestly. "Someone who'd see this entire situation as a PR problem to manage rather than actual people being harmed." "And what do you see now?" His question was quiet, almost intimate in the afternoon light filtering through the cafe windows. Kelsey considered him, trying to reconcile the man before her with both her preconceptions and her professional caution. "I'm not sure yet," she answered truthfully. "But I'm willing to reserve judgment until I see how this investigation plays out." A small smile curved his lips. "That's fair. More than fair. Given the circumstances of our first meeting." The mention of their hotel encounter brought a flush of color to Kelsey's cheeks. "About that, I trust you understand that if word got out, it would complicate this process considerably." "My lips are sealed," he assured her. "Though I admit it makes for a rather unusual origin story for professional collaboration." "Is that what we're doing? Collaborating?" She raised an eyebrow. "Aren't we?" he challenged gently. "Working together toward truth, whatever it reveals." As they gathered their materials to leave, their hands brushed briefly across the table. The contact was fleeting, incidental, but the jolt of awareness that shot through Kelsey was anything but professional. For a dangerous moment, she found herself wondering what might have happened if they'd met under different circumstances. Not as legal opponents or as strangers in a bizarre hotel encounter, but simply as two people drawn to each other's minds and presence. "Same time next week to review the investigator candidates?" Nathaniel suggested as they stood to leave. "Yes," Kelsey agreed, suddenly eager to put some distance between them, to regain her perspective. "My office will send the official counter-proposal tomorrow." As she watched him walk away, Kelsey was disturbed by the realization that for the first time in her career, she found herself hoping that a corporate defendant might not be as guilty as she'd initially believed. And that dangerous hope had little to do with legal merits, and everything to do with the man who had just left. What neither of them could have anticipated was how their professional collaboration would gradually unveil truths far more complex than water contamination. Truths about each other, about the facades they maintained, and about the unexpected connections that can form when two people dedicated to their opposing versions of right are forced to find common ground. Lake Minerva sparkled like scattered diamonds beneath the midday sun, its clear waters reflecting the surrounding pine forests and distant mountains. Nathaniel's cabin had turned out to be a masterfully designed two-story retreat of wood and glass that somehow managed to be both luxurious and organically integrated with its natural surroundings. Kelsey stood on the expansive deck overlooking the water, the crisp autumn air filling her lungs as she tried to reconcile this peaceful setting with the turmoil of emotions she'd been battling since accepting Nathaniel's invitation. She had dressed carefully for the day in jeans and a soft blue sweater, casual but flattering, a balance that had taken her far longer to decide upon than she cared to admit. Coffee? Nathaniel appeared beside her, offering a steaming mug. He looked different here. More relaxed in jeans and a Henley that revealed the strong lines of his shoulders and chest, his feet bare against the sun-warmed wood of the deck. This version of him seemed worlds away from the polished executive she'd first encountered. "Thank you," she said, accepting the mug, careful that their fingers didn't brush in the exchange. After last night's kiss in the conservatory, even the smallest contact felt charged with dangerous potential. "My grandfather built the original cabin," Nathaniel said, leaning against the railing beside her, his own mug cradled between his hands. Just a simple one-room structure where he'd fish and think. When I inherited it, I expanded it, but tried to keep that same feeling of connection to the land. Kelsey nodded, noting how the architecture respected the natural slope of the hillside, the materials sourced to blend with the surrounding environment. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "Not what I expected." A smile touched his lips. "What did you expect? A miniature version of corporate headquarters with a helipad and conference room?" "Something like that," she acknowledged with a small laugh. "Not this. Harmony with nature. From the CEO of a company being sued for environmental damage?" he finished for her, his tone light but his eyes serious. "I understand the contradiction. It's one I've been living with for too long." The honesty in his voice drew her gaze to his face, studying the complex emotions visible there. "Tell me about that," she said softly. "Not the corporate position or legal stance, but what you really think about what's happening at Riverside." Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the lake as if gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice had lost the practiced smoothness she'd associated with his executive persona. "My father built Hargrove Industries with his hands. Literally, he worked the manufacturing floor for the first decade, knew every machine, every process. He taught me that what we made mattered, that quality and integrity were everything." A shadow crossed his face. "But he also taught me that business survival sometimes meant making compromises. Practical decisions, he called them. Like cutting corners on waste disposal," Kelsey said. Not an accusation, but a quiet continuation of his thought. Nathaniel nodded. "When I took over after his death, I focused on innovation, expansion, market share. I told myself I was building his legacy while fixing the problems. Improved containment systems, better filtration, stricter protocols. But I never went back to address the damage already done." He turned to face her fully. "Until you forced me to." The admission hung in the air between them, weighted with a significance that transcended their professional roles. This wasn't CEO Hargrove speaking to Attorney Hayes. This was Nathaniel sharing a personal failing with Kelsey. "And now," she asked, "now I have decisions to make that will define both Hargrove Industries and my own legacy." His gaze was steady, unflinching, and I find myself measuring those decisions against a standard I never expected. What would Kelsey Hayes think of this choice? The intensity of his words sent warmth spreading through her chest, complicated by professional caution. "Nathaniel, I can't be your moral compass. I'm still representing people your company may have harmed." "I know," he acknowledged. "That's what makes your perspective so valuable. You have no incentive to tell me what I want to hear." A gust of wind swept across the lake, lifting strands of Kelsey's hair across her face. Without thinking, Nathaniel reached out, gently brushing them back. The brief contact of his fingers against her cheek sent a current of awareness through them both, a reminder of last night's kiss and the unresolved tension between them. "I promised you conversation today," he said softly, his hand dropping back to his side. "And I have something to show you if you're interested." "What is it?" "My grandfather's fishing boat. The lake is beautiful from the water." 20 minutes later, they were gliding across the crystal surface in a lovingly restored wooden rowboat, Nathaniel's strong strokes carrying them toward a small cove on the far shore. The physical activity seemed to ease some of the tension between them. replacing it with a more comfortable rhythm as they talked about safer topics, favorite books, college experiences, professional mentors who had shaped their early careers. "So you never wanted to do anything but environmental law?" Nathaniel asked as he shipped the oars, allowing the boat to drift in the sheltered cove where sunlight dappled through overhanging trees. Kelsey trailed her fingers through the cool water, watching ripples spread outward. "I considered corporate law briefly. The money was certainly better," she admitted with a small smile. "But I grew up in Portsmouth, near the chemical plants. I saw what happened when manufacturers prioritized profit over safety, how the community paid the price while executives who lived elsewhere counted their bonuses." "Like me," Nathaniel said quietly. She met his gaze directly. "Like you were," she corrected. "People can change, Nathaniel. Systems can change too, if the right people push for it." "Is that what you see happening at Hargrove Industries? Change?" "I see potential," she answered carefully. "The investigation is a start. What matters is what happens when all the results are in, when the full extent of the contamination is documented, when the cost of remediation becomes clear, when shareholders panic and your board demands damage control." "You think I'll revert to type when the pressure mounts," he observed. No accusation in his tone, just a thoughtful consideration. Kelsey hesitated, then decided honesty was essential if today was to have any meaning. "I've been disappointed before," she said simply, "by someone who claimed to share my values until they became inconvenient." Understanding dawned in Nathaniel's eyes. "The fiancé Amara mentioned last night." "Michael," Kelsey confirmed, surprised by how little the name hurt now. "We met in law school, shared the same passion for environmental justice. Then he got an offer from Longterm Industries, one of the worst corporate polluters in the country. He took it, told me I was naive to think we could change things from the outside." She shook her head. "He's now their chief counsel, fighting against the same causes we once championed together." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, absorbing her story. "So you have every reason to doubt my intentions," he finally said. "To expect that when the choice becomes difficult, I'll choose corporate interests over doing what's right." "Yes," she acknowledged. But, he prompted when she hesitated, "but I've never wanted to be wrong about someone more than I want to be wrong about you." The admission cost her something to make, a lowering of the professional shield she'd maintained throughout their collaboration. Nathaniel's expression softened, his eyes warming with an emotion that made her heart beat faster. "Ask me anything," he said suddenly. "Any question about Hargrove Industries, about Riverside, about me. Complete transparency." The offer surprised her. "Anything?" "Anything. No corporate filters, no legal caution, just truth." Kelsey considered for a moment, then asked the question that had been lingering since their investigation began. "The preliminary findings show contamination dating back decades, but concentrated in certain time periods. Did you know about specific disposal events that weren't properly handled?" It was the kind of direct question that would normally trigger immediate legal defenses, yet Nathaniel answered without hesitation. "Yes. In 2012, shortly after I became CEO, there was an incident with a batch of chemicals that didn't meet specifications. The proper disposal would have been expensive and potentially triggered regulatory scrutiny. The plant manager at the time suggested an alternative solution. Late-night release through a secondary drainage system. I authorized it." His expression was solemn, taking full responsibility. "It wasn't the only such incident, but it was the one where I was directly involved in the decision." The candor of his confession stunned her. This was precisely the kind of admission that could prove devastating in their lawsuit. Evidence of direct knowledge and approval of improper disposal. "Why would you tell me that?" she asked, her legal mind racing to process the implications. "Because you asked," he said simply, "and because I'm tired of the weight of these secrets, of the distance between who I present myself to be and who I actually am." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes intent on hers. "I want you to know the truth, Kelsey. All of it. Even the parts that don't reflect well on me. Especially those parts." The boat drifted slowly in the gentle current, at the only sounds the occasional call of birds and the soft lapping of water against wood. In this moment, suspended between their professional roles and personal attraction, Kelsey felt a shift within herself, a recognition that whatever was happening between them had moved beyond the boundaries of conventional relationship categories. "I have a confession too," she said finally. "When the Riverside case first came to our firm, I pushed to take the lead because I wanted to go after Hargrove Industries specifically. Your company represented everything I opposed: successful, respected, profitable, while communities suffered from your environmental negligence." She met his gaze directly. "I wanted to win against you personally. It wasn't just about justice for Riverside, it was about proving a point." Nathaniel nodded slowly, accepting her admission. "And now? Now I want justice for Riverside more than ever. But I also want—" She hesitated, struggling to articulate the complicated tangle of emotions that had developed over the past weeks. "I want to believe that change is possible, that someone like you can genuinely choose to do the right thing, even at great cost. Because if I can change, there's hope for the system," he finished for her. "Yes," she acknowledged, "and because I've come to care about what happens to you in the process." The admission hung between them, neither fully professional nor simply personal. A new territory they were charting together. Nathaniel reached across the small space separating them in the boat, his hand covering hers where it rested on the wooden seat. "Whatever happens with Riverside, with the investigation, with our respective professional roles," he said quietly, "what's developing between us is real, Kelsey. At least for me." The warmth of his hand on hers felt like an anchor in the uncertainty. "For me too," she admitted, turning her hand beneath his, so their palms met, fingers intertwining. "And that terrifies me." A smile touched his lips. "The formidable Kelsey Hayes afraid?" "Terrified," she confirmed, returning his smile with a small one of her own. "This breaks every rule I've set for myself professionally. It contradicts everything I thought I knew about people like you." And yet, he echoed, understanding in his eyes. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities. Then, with a gentleness that contrasted with his usual commanding presence, Nathaniel leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Unlike the passionate intensity of their kiss in the conservatory, this was slow, deliberate. A question being asked and answered in the meeting of their lips. Kelsey's free hand rose to his cheek, the slight roughness of late-day stubble beneath her fingertips, a contrast to the softness of his mouth against hers. Something unfurled within her, a tension releasing that she hadn't fully acknowledged until this moment. Here, away from their professional worlds, the connection between them felt both simpler and more profound. Stripped of the contextual complications, yet infinitely more meaningful because of them. When they finally drew apart, the air between them seemed to shimmer with unspoken promises and unresolved questions. Nathaniel's eyes searched hers, looking for regret or uncertainty, finding instead a reflection of his own complex emotions. "We should head back," he said softly. "The sun will be setting soon." The return journey across the lake was quiet, a comfortable silence settling between them as they processed what had transpired. By the time they reached the cabin, the sun was indeed beginning its descent, painting the sky in spectacular shades of orange and pink. On the deck, Nathaniel built a fire in the stone pit, the dancing flames creating a bubble of warmth against the cooling evening air. They sat side by side in Adirondack chairs, watching the light fade from the sky, talking more openly than they ever had before, about their childhoods, their disappointments, their hopes for the future. "I always imagined I'd follow my father's path," Nathaniel admitted as darkness settled fully over the lake. "Build the company bigger, better, more profitable. Leave a legacy he would be proud of." He stared into the flames, their light casting shadows across his strong features. "I never questioned whether his definition of success should be mine." "And now?" Kelsey asked, watching the play of emotions across his face. "Now I'm reimagining what Hargrove Industries could be. Not just profitable, but responsible. A leader in sustainable manufacturing, in environmental stewardship." He turned to her, his expression earnest in the firelight. It would mean slower growth, challenges with certain shareholders, perhaps even scaling back some operations. But it could also mean building something truly worth being proud of. "That sounds like a legacy worth pursuing," she said softly. He reached across the space between their chairs, taking her hand in his. "I'd like to show you something tomorrow morning, before we head back to the city. Something that might help you understand what I'm trying to do." "What is it?" "A surprise," he said with a small smile. "But I think it might matter to both of us." As the night deepened around them, their conversation gradually gave way to comfortable silences, punctuated by the crackling of the fire. When the temperature dropped further, Nathaniel suggested moving inside, and Kelsey found herself at a crossroads. Knowing that stepping into the cabin's intimate interior would likely change the nature of their time together. "I have a guest room prepared," he said quietly, reading her hesitation correctly. "No expectations, Kelsey. Today has already given me more than I dared hope for." The considerateness of his response, the respect for her boundaries despite the obvious attraction between them, settled something within her. "Thank you," she said simply, rising from her chair. Inside, the cabin's main room was a soaring space of timber and stone, dominated by a massive fireplace and windows that would frame the lake view in daylight. Nathaniel showed her to a guest suite that was more luxurious than most hotels, the decor elegant yet understated, clearly designed for comfort rather than show. "Sleep well," he said, lingering at the doorway, clearly reluctant to leave her but honoring the unspoken boundaries between them. "Nathaniel," she said as he turned to go, his name a question and answer both. He paused, looking back at her, the intensity of his gaze making her heart race despite the distance between them. "Today changed things," she acknowledged quietly. "I'm still not sure what this is between us, or what it can be, given our circumstances. But I don't regret coming here." The smile that spread across his face was different from any she'd seen before. Not the polished corporate expression, or even the warm one that had begun appearing during their collaboration, but something more genuine, almost boyish in its openness. "Neither do I," he replied simply. "Good night, Kelsey." As she prepared for bed in the luxurious guest suite, Kelsey found herself replaying moments from the day, their conversation in the boat, the kiss that had felt like both a beginning and a complication, the easy rapport that had developed as they talked by the fire. Nothing about this developing relationship followed any pattern she recognized, either professionally or personally. She should be more cautious, she knew. The lawsuit against Hargrove Industries was still active. The investigation results were still being compiled. Nathaniel's commitment to change, however sincere it seemed in this moment, would face significant tests when shareholders and board members pushed back. Yet as she slipped between the soft sheets, watching moonlight play across the ceiling, Kelsey felt something she hadn't expected. Hope, not just for a resolution to the Riverside situation that would bring justice to the affected community, but for the possibility that someone like Nathaniel Hargrove could indeed change, could choose to use his power and position to create something better than what had come before. And perhaps, most surprisingly, hope for whatever was developing between them. Complicated and contradictory as it might be, filled with potential for both heartbreak and something extraordinary. With that complex hope warming her heart, Kelsey drifted to sleep, curious about what surprise morning would bring, and increasingly certain that whatever unfolded between them now, nothing would ever be the same again. Has someone ever surprised you by showing a completely different side than what you initially thought of them? Life's most beautiful lessons often come when we open ourselves to seeing beyond first impressions. Share your experience in the comments below. Morning arrived with gentle persistence. Sunlight filtering through the guest room's windows and the distant call of birds replacing the city sounds Kelsey was accustomed to waking to. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind before memories of the previous day rushed back. The lake, the conversations, the kisses that had blurred professional boundaries beyond recognition. The smell of coffee and something baking drew her from the comfortable bed. She dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, running fingers through her sleep-tousled hair before venturing into the main living area. Nathaniel stood at the kitchen island, his back to her, as he arranged something on a plate. The domesticity of the scene, this powerful CEO, engaged in such an ordinary task, struck her with unexpected force. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, and the smile that spread across his face at the sight of her sent warmth cascading through her chest. "Good morning. I was hoping the smell of cinnamon rolls would lure you out." "Homemade?" she asked, eyebrows raised in surprise as she approached the kitchen island. "Family recipe," he confirmed, sliding a mug of coffee toward her. "My grandmother insisted every Hargrove should know how to make them properly. Said it built character." Kelsey accepted the coffee gratefully, noting how different he seemed here, relaxed, unguarded, far from the corporate persona she'd first encountered. "I'm having trouble reconciling the Nathaniel who makes cinnamon rolls from a family recipe with the CEO of a manufacturing empire." "That's understandable," he acknowledged, his expression turning more thoughtful. "I've compartmentalized those parts of myself for so long, I sometimes forget they're the same person." He gestured to the bar stools at the island. "Hungry?" Over breakfast, they spoke of lighter things, favorite hiking trails around the lake, a book they discovered they'd both recently read, memories of childhood weekends at lakeside retreats. The easy conversation felt like a continuation of the previous evening, as if they were deliberately prolonging this space outside their complicated reality. "So," Kelsey said finally, setting down her empty coffee mug, "this surprise you mentioned last night?" Nathaniel nodded, his expression shifting to something more serious. "It's about a 20-minute drive from here. We should head out soon if we want to be back in the city by afternoon." The morning was crisp and clear as they drove along winding roads in Nathaniel's Range Rover, forests gradually giving way to more developed areas. Kelsey noticed they were heading in the general direction of the city, but taking a route unfamiliar to her. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked as they turned onto a road that led toward what appeared to be an industrial area. "Hargrove Industries Research and Development Facility," Nathaniel replied, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, "the part that doesn't appear in our annual reports or press releases." Kelsey's professional instincts immediately sharpened. "Secret R&D? That sounds concerning given our current situation." A small smile touched his lips. "Not secret in a nefarious way, just protected from competitors and shareholders with short-term focus." They passed through a security gate where the guard recognized Nathaniel immediately, then drove to a modern building set apart from the main complex. Unlike the corporate headquarters downtown with its imposing glass and steel presence, this structure seemed designed to blend into its surroundings, with living green walls and solar panels visible on the roof. Inside, Nathaniel led her through a reception area where no company logos were displayed, then down a corridor to a large laboratory space. Scientists in white coats moved purposefully between workstations filled with equipment Kelsey didn't recognize. Mr. Hargrove, a woman in her early 50s, approached them, her expression brightening at the sight of Nathaniel. "We weren't expecting you today." "Dr. Winters," Nathaniel greeted her warmly. "This is an impromptu visit. I wanted to show Miss Hayes the restoration project." The scientist's eyes widened slightly as she turned to Kelsey. "Miss Hayes, the environmental attorney? From the Riverside case?" "The same," Nathaniel confirmed calmly. "She has my complete trust." Dr. Winters hesitated only momentarily before nodding. "Of course. We just completed a successful field test of the new bioremediation protocol last week. The results are impressive." "That's what I was hoping to show her," Nathaniel explained. "Is the demonstration model operational?" "Always," Dr. Winters smiled. "Follow me." They were led to a separate laboratory where a large-scale model occupied the center of the room, a miniature landscape, complete with soil, water features, and even small plants. One section of the model showed dark, contaminated soil and cloudy water that Kelsey immediately recognized as similar to the conditions at Riverside. "This is our testing environment for the restoration project," Dr. Winters explained, her professional demeanor warming as she spoke about her work. "For the past 3 years, we've been developing advanced bioremediation techniques specifically designed to address industrial contamination, like what we're finding at Riverside." Kelsey looked sharply at Nathaniel. 3 years? You've been working on this since before our lawsuit?" He nodded. "Since I received the first internal reports indicating potential historical contamination issues, I knew traditional cleanup methods were expensive and often ineffective. We needed something better." Dr. Winters continued her explanation, demonstrating how their engineered microorganisms and plant systems could break down specific industrial contaminants at a fraction of the time and cost of conventional methods. She showed test results, timeline projections, and even samples from field trials conducted at sites with similar contamination profiles to Riverside. As the scientist spoke, Kelsey felt her worldview shifting. This wasn't a hastily developed response to legal pressure or a PR exercise. This was years of focused research, millions in investment, and genuine innovation aimed specifically at solving the very problem her lawsuit addressed. "Why keep this secret?" she asked finally, turning to Nathaniel. "This technology could transform how industrial contamination is addressed everywhere." "And it will," he assured her. "But we needed to perfect it first to ensure it actually works in real-world conditions. And honestly," he hesitated, his expression complicated, "I was concerned about shareholder reaction to what this represents." "Which is an acknowledgement of responsibility," Dr. Winters answered for him. By developing such specific remediation technology, Hargrove Industries would effectively be admitting its historical contamination issues. "Exactly," Nathaniel confirmed. "When we announce this publicly, which we will once the Riverside investigation is complete, it will come with full disclosure of our historical environmental impact and a commitment to remediate all affected sites, not just those under legal scrutiny." Kelsey tried to process the implications of what she was seeing. "Your board will fight this. Your shareholders might revolt when they understand the financial implications." "Probably," he agreed with remarkable calm. "That's why I've been quietly consolidating my ownership position over the past 2 years. As of last month, I control 62% of voting shares. The board can advise, but they can't stop this." The magnitude of what he was showing her, not just the technology, but the long-term strategy it represented, left Kelsey momentarily speechless. This wasn't the action of a CEO concerned with quarterly profits or even conventional corporate reputation. This was someone fundamentally reimagining what his company could be, and backing that vision with years of investment and preparation. After a comprehensive tour of the facility and detailed explanations of the remediation technology, they thanked Dr. Winters and headed back to the car. Kelsey remained quiet, processing everything she had seen and its implications for both the Riverside case and her understanding of Nathaniel himself. As they drove away from the facility, Nathaniel finally broke the silence. "I wanted you to see that before we return to our professional roles, to understand that my commitment to addressing the Riverside situation isn't just talk or a legal strategy." "Why show me this now?" she asked. "This could completely change the dynamics of our case. As opposing counsel, I should be informing my clients immediately about this technology and your plans for remediation." "I know," he said simply, "and I'm not asking you to withhold anything from your clients. In fact, I'm counting on you sharing this with them." Kelsey turned in her seat to study his profile as he drove. "You're voluntarily giving the plaintiffs information that strengthens their position?" A smile touched his lips. "I'm giving them information that changes what winning might look like." The traditional approach would be years of litigation, followed by a settlement that probably wouldn't fully address the actual environmental damage. This offers a different path: faster remediation, more complete restoration, better health outcomes for the community. And for Hargrove Industries? A significant financial hit in the short term, he acknowledged, but long-term benefits in technological leadership, regulatory relationships, and eventually a completely new revenue stream from licensing the remediation technology to other companies facing similar challenges. The pieces clicked into place for Kelsey. You're not just fixing a problem, you're transforming your company's entire relationship with environmental impact. That's the goal, he confirmed, though I wasn't entirely honest about my motivations earlier. "Oh," she asked, suddenly wary. "I said I started this project 3 years ago because of internal reports about potential contamination. That's true, but incomplete." His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "I also did it because I visited Riverside anonymously after the first complaints emerged. I saw the children with unexplained rashes, talked to families dealing with illness clusters, watched wildlife struggling in contaminated waters. His voice grew quieter. I knew in my gut our company was responsible, even before the technical evidence was clear. The confession hung in the air between them, revealing a depth of personal reckoning that Kelsey hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just corporate strategy or even ethical business leadership. This was a man confronting the real human impact of decisions made under his watch and those who came before him. That night in your hotel room, he continued, when you confronted me about Riverside, you weren't telling me anything I didn't already know. You were just the first person to hold me personally accountable for it, to see through the corporate shield to the human responsibility beneath. And something about that changed everything. They had reached a scenic overlook point, and Nathaniel pulled the car into the viewing area, turning off the engine. For a moment, they sat in silence. The valley spread before them, bathed in morning light, the city visible in the distance. I don't know what happens next, he said finally, turning to face her. Between us, between our professional roles, between Hargrove Industries and the Riverside community. But I wanted you to see the whole truth before we go back to that complicated reality. Kelsey felt the weight of the moment, understanding that what happened next would define not just their personal relationship, but potentially the outcome for everyone involved in the Riverside situation. The attorney in her recognized the professional complications of what was developing between them. The advocate in her saw the tremendous potential of the remediation technology and Nathaniel's commitment to deploying it. And the woman in her acknowledged the deepening connection with a man who kept surprising her in the most fundamental ways. I need to tell my clients about the remediation technology, she said finally, and I need to disclose to my firm what's developing between us personally. Those are non-negotiable ethical obligations. I understand, he nodded, no hesitation in his acceptance of these professional necessities. But, she continued, meeting his gaze directly, I also believe what you've shown me today represents a better outcome for Riverside than what we could achieve through conventional litigation. And, she hesitated, then committed to the truth. I want to explore what's happening between us, complicated as it might be. The tension in his expression gave way to cautious hope. So where does that leave us? In uncharted territory, she admitted with a small smile. But maybe that's where the most important journeys begin. Without another word, Nathaniel reached across the space between them, his hand finding hers. They sat in silence for several minutes, hands intertwined, looking out at the vista before them. The physical landscape mirroring their emotional one, complex and beautiful and full of both challenges and possibilities. The drive back to the city was comfortable, filled with conversation that ranged from the practical next steps with the Riverside case to more personal revelations about their lives and values. As they approached the outskirts of downtown, however, reality began to intrude, their professional worlds coming back into focus with each mile. Where should I drop you? Nathaniel asked as they entered the city proper. The question carried more weight than its simple words suggested. Being seen together now, after their weekend away, would trigger questions neither was quite ready to answer publicly. My apartment, please, Kelsey decided. I need to prepare for some difficult conversations with my firm tomorrow. When they arrived at her building, Nathaniel turned to her before she could exit the car. Whatever happens next with our professional situation, I want you to know that these past 2 days have been, he paused, searching for adequate words, transformative for me. For me too, she admitted softly. He leaned across the console, his kiss gentle but filled with promise. I'll wait to hear from you about how to proceed with the remediation proposal. Your clients and your firm need to be your priority right now. The consideration in his words, putting her professional obligations first despite their personal connection, confirmed yet again that he was not the man she had initially believed him to be. I'll call you tomorrow, she promised, reluctantly pulling away and gathering her things. As Kelsey entered her apartment, the familiar surroundings seemed somehow different, as if her changed perspective had altered even these unchanging spaces. She moved through her evening routine mechanically, her mind filled with competing thoughts about what the coming days would bring. Her phone chimed with a text message just as she was preparing for bed. "Thank you for today. For seeing me, not just the CEO or the defendant, but the person I'm trying to become. Whatever comes next, that gift matters more than you know." N. The simple message brought tears to her eyes, unexpected emotion welling up at his vulnerability and sincerity. As she typed a response, Kelsey knew with absolute certainty that tomorrow would bring professional challenges unlike any she had faced before, but also possibilities for something extraordinary if they could navigate the complicated path ahead. "Thank you for trusting me with the truth. About Riverside, about the remediation project, about yourself. The person you're becoming is someone I very much want to know better." As she set her phone aside and settled into bed, Kelsey's mind turned to the conversations awaiting her tomorrow. With her firm's senior partners, with her clients from Riverside, with Amara who had warned her about exactly this complication. None would be easy. All carried professional risks. Yet beneath the apprehension was a current of certainty she hadn't expected. Whatever happened next with the case, with her career, with the developing relationship between her and Nathaniel, she knew they had stumbled upon something authentic and valuable. A connection that had begun in the most unlikely way imaginable, but had evolved into something with the potential to transform not just their lives, but the lives of an entire community. With that thought warming her heart, Kelsey drifted to sleep, no longer fearing the complications tomorrow would bring, but curious about the possibilities they might create. The conference room at Hayes Environmental Law felt unnaturally silent as Kelsey finished presenting the information about Hargrove Industries' remediation technology. 5 pairs of eyes stared back at her, her firm's 3 senior partners and Amara, expressions ranging from shock to calculation to thinly veiled disapproval. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," said Martin Green, the firm's founding partner, removing his reading glasses to fix Kelsey with a penetrating stare. "Nathaniel Hargrove personally showed you a secret research facility developing technology specifically designed to address the contamination issues at Riverside?" "Yes," Kelsey confirmed, maintaining her professional composure despite the discomfort of being scrutinized by her colleagues. "The technology is impressive, more effective than conventional remediation methods and significantly faster. It could completely transform the outcome for the Riverside community." "And you discovered this how, exactly?" Eleanor Winters, the most senior female partner, asked with careful neutrality that didn't quite mask her concern. This was the moment Kelsey had been dreading, the necessary disclosure that would complicate everything. She took a deep breath and met her mentor's gaze directly. "Nathaniel Hargrove invited me to his lake house this weekend. It was not a professional meeting." The words hung in the air, their implications unmistakable. "On Sunday, before returning to the city, he took me to the research facility." A heavy silence followed her admission. Amara's eyes closed briefly in what looked like pained vindication. She had warned Kelsey precisely about this scenario. "So you're telling us," James Porter, the third partner, said slowly, "that you have developed a personal relationship with the CEO of the company we are actively suing for environmental damages? The lead defendant in our highest-profile current case?" "Yes," Kelsey acknowledged, refusing to equivocate. "That's why I called this meeting immediately upon returning. I understand the ethical implications and potential conflicts of interest this creates." "Potential conflicts?" James repeated incredulously. "Kelsey, this goes beyond potential. This is an actual textbook conflict of interest, one that could compromise the entire case and possibly expose the firm to sanctions." "I'm well aware of the professional complications," Kelsey replied, keeping her voice steady. "That's why I'm suggesting we bring in co-counsel immediately to ensure our clients' interests remain paramount. I've prepared a list of qualified firms who could step in." Martin Green studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. After 40 years of environmental litigation, very little surprised him, but this clearly had. "Before we discuss next steps," he said finally, "I need to understand your perspective, Kelsey. You've built your career fighting companies like Hargrove Industries. You've been our most passionate advocate against corporate environmental negligence. What changed?" The question cut to the heart of her own internal struggle. Kelsey considered her words carefully, aware that her response would likely determine her professional future, at least at this firm. "What changed is that I discovered Nathaniel Hargrove isn't who I thought he was," she began. "The remediation technology isn't a hasty response to our lawsuit. It's a long-term project he initiated years ago, born from his own recognition of the damage his company had caused. He's been quietly repositioning Hargrove Industries' ownership structure to ensure he can implement full remediation and disclosure without being blocked by the board." She gestured to the technical specifications she'd presented earlier. "This technology represents a better outcome for Riverside than anything we could achieve through conventional litigation. Faster cleaning of the contamination, better health monitoring for affected residents, and a commitment to addressing historical damage at all Hargrove facilities, not just the ones under legal scrutiny." "And you believe him?" Amara finally spoke, her tone more sad than accusatory. "After everything we've seen from corporate defendants, after what happened with Michael, you're willing to trust the CEO of Hargrove Industries because he showed you some impressive technology and what charmed you at his lake house?" The comparison to Michael, Kelsey's ex-fiancé who had abandoned their shared principles, stung, but she refused to flinch from it. "I believe the science," she countered evenly. "The technology is real. The test results are verifiable, and the remediation proposal is more comprehensive than anything we could reasonably achieve even with a complete legal victory." She paused, then added with quiet certainty, "And yes, I believe him. Not blindly, not without verification, but I believe his commitment to transforming Hargrove Industries' environmental impact is genuine." Eleanor Winters leaned forward, her shrewd eyes assessing Kelsey carefully. "And what happens when shareholder pressure mounts? When the financial implications of full remediation and disclosure hit the stock price? When the board pushes back against this transformation? Will his commitment remain as strong then?" "He's prepared for that," Kelsey explained. "He's consolidated controlling interest in the company specifically to weather that storm. The announcement of the remediation technology will come with full historical disclosure and a comprehensive plan for addressing all affected sites, regardless of legal action." The three partners exchanged glances, years of professional partnership allowing them to communicate silently. Finally, Martin turned back to Kelsey. "We need to discuss this privately," he said, "and we'll need to speak with the Riverside Plaintiffs Committee immediately. You understand that we cannot continue as lead counsel with this conflict of interest." "I understand," Kelsey nodded, the professional reality of her choices settling heavily on her shoulders. "I've prepared transition materials for whoever takes over the case." As she gathered her documents to leave, Eleanor spoke again. "Kelsey, whatever happens with the case, with your position here, was it worth it?" The question wasn't asked with judgment, but with genuine curiosity from a woman who had navigated her own difficult choices throughout her career. Kelsey paused at the door, considering. "I believe what's happening between Nathaniel and me could lead to better outcomes for everyone involved. The Riverside community, future communities affected by industrial contamination, even Hargrove Industries itself," she said thoughtfully. "If that potential is realized, then yes, it will have been worth the professional complications. If not," she smiled slightly, "then I've made a spectacular error in judgment, and I'll face those consequences too." With that, she left the conference room, closing the door quietly behind her. Amara found her in her office 30 minutes later, packing personal items into a cardboard box. "They haven't made a decision yet," Amara said, leaning against the doorframe. "You don't need to clear out your office." "I'm just being practical," Kelsey replied, carefully wrapping a framed photo of herself with her parents at her law school graduation. "Whatever happens, I won't be working on the Riverside case anymore. At minimum, I'll be taking a leave of absence until the situation clarifies." Amara sighed, entering the office and closing the door behind her. "I warned you about this, Kels. I saw it happening and I warned you." "You did," Kelsey acknowledged, "and you were right to be concerned." "Then why?" Amara asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "Why risk everything you've worked for? Your reputation, your career, the case itself. Kelsey set down the photo she was holding, meeting her friend's troubled gaze. Because sometimes the path to the right outcome isn't the one we initially envisioned. The goal has always been justice for Riverside, clean water, medical care for affected residents, accountability for the contamination. If Nathaniel's remediation technology and disclosure plan can achieve that more effectively than years of litigation. That's the rational explanation, Amara observed, but we both know there's more to it than that. A small smile touched Kelsey's lips. Yes, she admitted, there's more to it. I've never met anyone like him, Amara, someone who can acknowledge his mistakes and his company's mistakes and commit to fixing them completely, not just legally but morally. Someone who looks at his power and position and asks what responsibility comes with it, rather than what privilege it confers. He sounds too good to be true, Amara said, skepticism evident in her tone. He's not perfect. Kelsey countered. He made the same profit-driven decisions as any other CEO for years. He authorized improper disposal of chemicals. He let legal teams fight legitimate claims from affected communities. She paused. But he's choosing a different path now, and not just because of external pressure. That matters to me. Amara studied her friend for a long moment. You really care about him, don't you? This isn't just physical attraction or being charmed by power. I do, Kelsey admitted quietly. More than I expected. More than is professionally convenient, certainly. The admission seemed to soften something in Amara's stance. She moved forward, perching on the edge of Kelsey's desk. For what it's worth, the partners are impressed with the remediation technology. Martin thinks it could indeed be a better outcome for the Riverside plaintiffs than what we were likely to achieve through litigation. Hope flickered in Kelsey's chest. Really? Really, Amara confirmed. They're arranging a meeting with the plaintiffs' committee for tomorrow to present the information. If the committee is receptive to pursuing remediation rather than damages, it changes the entire landscape of the case. And my position at the firm? Amara's expression grew more serious. That's complicated. Obviously, you can't continue working on the Riverside case or any matter involving Hargrove Industries. Beyond that, she shrugged. It depends on how things develop, both with the case and with your relationship with Nathaniel Hargrove. Kelsey nodded, the uncertainty of her professional future weighing heavily despite her confidence in the choices she'd made. I understand. For what it's worth, Amara added, her tone softening further, I hope I'm wrong about him. I hope he really is different from Michael and all the other corporate executives we've watched prioritize profit over people. I hope he makes you happy, Kels. The simple expression of support from her usually skeptical friend brought unexpected tears to Kelsey's eyes. Thank you, she whispered. That means a lot. As Amara left, Kelsey's phone buzzed with a text message. Nathaniel, how did your firm take the news? She typed a response, appreciating his direct approach rather than dancing around the difficult topic. About as well as could be expected. They're meeting with the Riverside plaintiffs tomorrow to present the remediation option. My professional future is uncertain. His reply came quickly. I'm sorry for the complications this is causing you professionally. If you need anything at all, I'm here. A moment later, another message arrived. For what it's worth, I just finished a brutal meeting with my executive team about the coming announcement. You're not the only one facing professional pushback today. The knowledge that he was navigating his own difficult conversations brought a small smile to Kelsey's face. Whatever was developing between them, they were facing the consequences of their choices together, each in their own professional sphere. Dinner tonight? She texted back. I could use some company that doesn't look at me like I've lost my mind. Name the place and time. I'll be there. As Kelsey set her phone down and returned to organizing her office, she felt a curious mixture of professional uncertainty and personal clarity. The path ahead was complicated, filled with potential pitfalls and challenges, but she couldn't bring herself to regret the choices that had led her here. Whatever happened next, with the Riverside case, with her career at the firm, with Nathaniel Hargrove, she had followed her judgment about what would truly serve justice while also honoring the unexpected connection that had developed between them. That integrity of purpose provided a foundation as she prepared to face the consequences, both professional and personal, of crossing boundaries she had once believed to be absolute. Have you ever had to choose between what was expected of you and what you knew in your heart was right? Sometimes the most meaningful paths forward require us to be brave enough to challenge our own preconceptions. Let me know in the comments below. 6 months later, Kelsey stood at the edge of what had once been a contaminated retention pond in Riverside, now transformed into a thriving wetland ecosystem. Native plants swayed gently in the breeze, their roots working in harmony with the specially engineered microorganisms to complete the final stages of bioremediation. In the distance, children played in a new community park that had been built as part of the comprehensive restoration project. "It's remarkable," Gloria Mendez said, coming to stand beside her. "A year ago, I wouldn't let my kids within a mile of this place. Now my daughter's school is planning a field trip here to learn about wetland ecosystems." Kelsey smiled, genuine pleasure warming her at both the environmental transformation and the community's renewed sense of safety. The latest water quality tests show contaminant levels well below EPA standards. The restoration is actually ahead of schedule. Gloria nodded, her expression thoughtful as she surveyed the landscape. "You know, when you first told us about Hargrove's remediation plan, I thought it was just another corporate tactic to avoid real responsibility." She turned to Kelsey, her eyes reflecting hard-won wisdom. "I've never been happier to be wrong." "Neither have I," Kelsey admitted, thinking of her own initial judgment of Nathaniel and Hargrove Industries. They walked together along the newly constructed pathway that bordered the wetland, Gloria updating Kelsey on the community health program that had been established as part of the settlement. Regular monitoring, specialized care for affected residents, and preventative screening had all been implemented, funded by a trust that Hargrove Industries had established with enough capital to ensure operations for decades to come. "How are things at your new firm?" Gloria asked as they neared the community center that served as headquarters for the ongoing restoration efforts. "Different," Kelsey replied honestly, "challenging in new ways, but fulfilling." After the resolution of the Riverside case, Kelsey had made the difficult decision to leave Hayes Environmental Law. The partners had been understanding, even supportive once the positive outcomes of the remediation approach became clear. But everyone had recognized that her professional path had fundamentally changed. She had joined a smaller firm specializing in collaborative environmental solutions, working with both communities and corporations to implement sustainable practices and remediation where needed. As they approached the community center, Kelsey caught sight of Nathaniel speaking with a group of environmental engineers near the building's entrance. Even from a distance, she could see the animation in his gestures as he discussed some technical aspect of the restoration, his passion for the project evident in his engaged expression. In the months since their relationship had begun, she had watched him navigate the professional consequences of his choices with the same determination he brought to everything. Hargrove Industries stock had indeed taken a significant hit when the full historical disclosure and remediation commitments were announced. Several board members had resigned in protest. Business publications had questioned his judgment and leadership. Yet through it all, Nathaniel had maintained his course, implementing the changes he had committed to not just at Riverside, but at every Hargrove facility with historical contamination issues. The remediation technology was now being licensed to other companies facing similar environmental challenges, creating a new revenue stream that was gradually offsetting the costs of addressing their own sites. "There's your CEO," Gloria remarked, following Kelsey's gaze with a knowing smile. "Still hard to believe he's the same man who fought our claims for years." "People can change," Kelsey said softly, "when they choose to." As if sensing their attention, Nathaniel looked up, his face brightening when he spotted Kelsey. He excused himself from the engineers and walked toward them. His casual clothing, jeans and a button-down with rolled sleeves, a far cry from the formal business attire he'd worn at their first courthouse encounter. "Ms. Mendez," he greeted Gloria with genuine respect. "How are the new monitoring results looking for your family?" "All clear," Gloria confirmed. "My daughter's respiratory issues have improved dramatically since the remediation began. Dr. Wilson says many families are showing similar improvements. That's excellent news, Nathaniel replied, his satisfaction clearly stemming from the tangible positive impact rather than any corporate benefit. The medical monitoring program is one of the most important components of this project. They chatted for a few minutes more before Gloria excused herself to attend a community planning meeting, leaving Kelsey and Nathaniel alone at the edge of the restored wetland. "You look tired," Kelsey observed, noting the faint shadows beneath his eyes despite his energetic demeanor. "Board meetings all week," he admitted with a rueful smile. "The quarterly numbers are starting to improve, but some of the directors are still pressing for faster cost-cutting measures." "And your position?" "Unchanged," he replied with quiet certainty. "We're seeing this through, all of it, not just Riverside. The remediation technology is proving its value, both environmentally and financially. We just need to weather the transition period." Kelsey nodded, pride warming her chest at his unwavering commitment. The path he had chosen wasn't easy. Transforming a multinational corporation's approach to environmental responsibility never could be. But he had maintained his course, despite the substantial pressures to compromise. "I have news," she said as they began walking along the pathway that bordered the wetland, their hands naturally finding each other's. "The collaborative approach we developed for Riverside is being studied as a model for similar cases. The EPA has invited me to join a working group on innovative environmental remediation strategies." "That's wonderful," Nathaniel replied, genuine pleasure lighting his eyes. "Your perspective will be invaluable to them." "There's more," she continued. "The working group meets in Washington. If I accept, I'd need to be there at least 1 week each month for the next year." Understanding dawned in his expression. "That's a significant commitment, especially with your caseload at the new firm." "It is," she agreed. "But it's also an opportunity to influence environmental policy at a national level, to help establish frameworks for the kind of collaborative solutions we pioneered here." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, considering. They had been navigating the complexities of their relationship alongside their demanding professional lives for half a year now, finding balance despite the challenges. This new development would add another layer of logistical complexity. "You should accept," he said finally, his voice reflecting the supportive partnership that had developed between them. "This is important work, Kelsey, the kind of systemic change you've always wanted to create." "What about us?" she asked directly. "We already struggle to find enough time together with our current schedules." A smile touched his lips as he stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "I've been thinking about that issue already, actually, even before this new opportunity arose." "Oh?" Kelsey questioned, curious about his thoughtful expression. From his pocket, Nathaniel withdrew a small box, not the velvet jewelry box she half expected, but a wooden one small enough to fit in his palm. He opened it to reveal an old-fashioned key. "What's this?" she asked, taking the key from its velvet nest. "A solution to our scheduling challenges," he explained. "It's the key to my apartment, or rather, our apartment, if you want it to be. I thought it might be time to stop maintaining 2 residences we're barely at individually, in favor of creating one home we can share." The simple practicality of the gesture, combined with the significant commitment it represented, touched Kelsey deeply. It was so characteristic of Nathaniel. Thoughtful, straightforward, focused on building something lasting, rather than grand romantic gestures. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" she clarified, a smile spreading across her face. "I am," he confirmed, his expression growing more serious. "These past 6 months have shown me that what we're building together, professionally and personally, is something I want to nurture and strengthen. Coming home to you, even after the most challenging days, has become the center point of my life." Kelsey closed her fingers around the key, feeling its solid weight in her palm. "Yes," she said simply, "though we might need to discuss whose apartment makes more sense to keep." Relief and happiness transformed his expression. "That's a practical detail we can figure out together," he agreed, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home already. As they stood together at the edge of the restored wetland, Kelsey reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From waking to find a stranger in her hotel room to building a shared life together. From professional antagonists to partners in creating meaningful change. None of it had followed any path she could have anticipated. "What are you thinking?" Nathaniel asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "I'm thinking about room keys," she replied with a small smile, "and how sometimes the wrong door can lead to exactly the right place." Understanding lit his eyes as he recalled their unusual beginning. "The best wrong turn I ever took," he murmured, bending to kiss her lightly. As they walked back toward the community center, hands intertwined and plans for their shared future taking shape between them, Kelsey felt a profound sense of rightness. The professional and personal boundaries she had once considered absolute had been redrawn, not erased, but transformed into something more nuanced and ultimately more meaningful. The path ahead would continue to hold challenges, the ongoing remediation projects, the balance of her new role with the EPA working group, the evolution of Hargrove Industries' environmental practices, and the everyday complexities of building a life together. But they would navigate those challenges as they had navigated the unexpected journey that had brought them together, with integrity, determination, and a shared commitment to creating something better than what had come before. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of Nathaniel's apartment, soon to be their apartment, Kelsey found herself contemplating the strange, winding road of coincidence and choice that had led them here. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" she asked softly. "If you hadn't gotten the wrong room key that night? If I'd called security immediately instead of confronting you?" Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing gentle patterns along her shoulder as he considered. "I've thought about it," he admitted. "I was on an unsustainable path before I met you, building Hargrove Industries bigger without addressing the fundamental issues, accumulating success while feeling increasingly hollow inside." He shifted to look at her in the darkness, his expression visible in the faint glow from the city lights beyond the window. Something would have forced a reckoning eventually. Maybe the Riverside lawsuit itself, maybe something else. But meeting you the way I did. He smiled. It was like the universe decided subtlety wasn't working and needed to put us on a collision course. Kelsey laughed softly at his characterization. "A very literal collision course, with you landing in my hotel bed. Technically, on top of your hotel bed," he corrected with mock seriousness, then grew more thoughtful. "But you're right. It could have gone very differently. If I'd chosen another bar that night, if the hotel had better security protocols, if you'd reacted differently. If I hadn't been in room 718 with a class action lawsuit against your company," she added. Is, he murmured, drawing her closer. "I used to be someone who planned everything meticulously, who believed success came from controlling all variables. Now I find myself grateful for the unpredictable, for all the things I couldn't have planned that brought me to exactly where I needed to be." The simple wisdom in his words resonated deeply with Kelsey. She had always approached her career with similar precision, careful strategies, calculated risks, clear boundaries between professional and personal. Yet the most transformative experience of her life had come through a completely random accident, an unpredictable collision of circumstances that had changed everything. "I'm grateful too," she whispered, resting her head against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. "For wrong room keys and confrontational awakenings and all the unexpected turns that followed." As sleep began to claim her, Kelsey's thoughts drifted to the restored wetland they had visited earlier that day. Once damaged by industrial carelessness, now healing through deliberate care and innovative approaches. Like that ecosystem, their relationship had begun from a place of damage and confrontation, but had transformed into something nurturing and regenerative, not just for them personally, but for the communities and environments their work now touched. It wasn't the path either of them had envisioned for themselves. It had required both to reconsider deeply held assumptions, to redraw professional boundaries, to weather significant challenges to their respective careers. Yet as Kelsey drifted toward sleep in the warmth of Nathaniel's embrace, She knew with absolute certainty that the unexpected journey had led them both exactly where they needed to be. Not just with each other, but with themselves. The wrong room key had, impossibly, opened all the right doors. My beautiful royal story family. What a journey we've been on together. From that first moment of shock when Nathaniel woke up in Kelsey's hotel room, to this partnership that's transforming not just their lives but an entire community and industry. Isn't it remarkable how life's most meaningful connections can begin in the most unexpected ways? I think what touches me most about their story is how they each found the courage to see beyond their initial judgments and professional roles to recognize the authentic person on the other side. Kelsey saw past the corporate CEO to the man grappling with his legacy and responsibilities. Nathaniel saw past the adversarial attorney to the passionate advocate fighting for justice. And in seeing each other truly, they found not just love, but a shared purpose greater than either could have achieved alone. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most valuable connections in our lives come from places we never would have looked, arriving in ways we couldn't have planned. And sometimes, what initially seems like a mistake or an accident turns out to be the beginning of something extraordinary. I'd love to know, has there been a wrong door moment in your own life that led to something unexpected and beautiful? A chance meeting, a wrong turn, a mistake that turned into a blessing? Share your stories in the comments below. Our shared experiences are what make this royal family so special. As Nathaniel and Kelsey discovered, transformation is rarely easy or comfortable. Both had to risk their professional identities, face judgment from colleagues, and navigate uncharted waters. But the courage to follow a deeper truth, even when it contradicts our previous certainties, is what allows us to grow into our fullest selves. Before we part ways today, remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already joined our Royal Story family. Each day, we explore these journeys of hearts, finding each other against all odds, of people discovering their true paths through love and courage. And don't forget to tap the notification bell so you'll know the moment our next story arrives. Whether you're watching from a bustling city or quiet countryside, whether you're beginning your own unexpected journey or cherishing one that's already transformed your life, know that you're part of this circle of storytelling that connects us all across time and distance. Your presence here matters, and I'm grateful for each moment we share in this palace of stories. Until tomorrow, my beautiful Royal Story family, may you remain open to the unexpected doors that might just lead you exactly where you need to be.